Broadcasting live from the Business RadioX studios in Nashville, it's time for Nashville Business Radio. Now, here's your host.
And hello again, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Nashville Business Radio. I'm John Ray, and folks, I've been looking forward to this one. Andrew Arbogast is with us. Andrew is the founder and owner of Arbos Cheese Dip. Andrew, welcome.
Hey, John. Good morning. Thank you for having me on. I've been excited about this. It's been on the calendar for over a month, and I'm happy this is finally here. So thank you.
Me too. I'm glad we could get this booked and get you on because you've got a great story to tell. Let's get right to it. Let's first of all start with Arbos Cheese Dip. Let everyone know how you're serving the market out there.
Sure. So Arbos Cheese Dip, and as you heard John say, my last name is Arbogast. So if you're wondering where that came from, Arbos Cheese Dip, I started this company December 31st, 2020, I guess smack dab in the middle of the pandemic, when I was working at international paper as a global sourcing category manager for a buyer. And this is a family recipe that is, I'm paying tribute to my father. It's his recipe. And the idea came, one night outside with some friends, and we were just kind of talking about how we were not happy with our jobs. And then before you know it, I said, well, I'm going to sell cheese dip, my dad's cheese dip recipe. And it was funny, right? And then it went from being comical and a joke to very serious once I started to really delve into it. And then before you know it, we're selling the first container at a grocery store and here in Memphis, where I'm from, May 15th. And then quickly that went from one store to 10 store. And now we're available in 700 stores. And that was just a matter of 6 months, actually, maybe even less than that, from the first unit sold. And the local community, the local aspect. I'm a veteran-owned business. I spent 10 years in the Army as an Apache helicopter pilot, and so a lot of that story behind it. Me quitting my day job to do this full time. Where they're calling this the Great Resignation, and I guess I'm not saying I'm a trailblazer. I'm just doing what my gut is telling me to do, and it's working. So.
That's awesome. Wow. A whole lot to unpack there. I want to get into your background just a little bit, and thank you for your service to our country in some pretty hot theaters. You were in Iraq and Afghanistan. I'm curious specifically about your military background, what that does for you in your entrepreneurial journey. I mean, what of that experience do you bring forward that helps you day to day?
Oh man. So, it's one of those things where it's like hindsight's 2020. I had no idea what my future held. And the idea of being an entrepreneur was terrifying. I didn't want to do it. I thought being an entrepreneur meant you had to invent some gadget and patent it. And, I don't consider myself very intellectual, and I'm like, I'm not going to be able to do that. So I'm just going to go work for someone and they'll tell me what to do. And then I'll live a happy life, so but that goes back to like my childhood and a passion, right? I never thought of serving in the military as a passion of mine. And honestly, I think that kind of happened as a calling because of 9/11. But leading up to that point, my thing was food and culinary. I wanted to go to culinary school. Even as a young child, I love cooking, and it's something I learned from my dad. But, as going through my my high school years, I got the, 9/11 happened. I was a junior. And then before you know it, I'm signed up on an Army ROTC scholarship. And that means that I owe at least 4 years after graduating college, full time as an officer. Right. So I decide, well, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to try to do the the most fun job that they have, which was flying helicopters. And so I took the aviation flight aptitude test and did really well somehow. And before you know it, I get branched aviation, but I didn't read the fine print. This was back in the surge for Iraq, Operation Iraqi Freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're basically handing out some of this stuff. It's like, hey, if you select aviation, we're going to give it to you, but you're going to serve an additional 3 years. And then I didn't read the fine print, like I said. So I went from owing like 6 to 10.
Uh-oh.
And so I had the next 10 years of my life set out for me. And so I accepted that, even though I wasn't necessarily happy with it, just because I like to have control of my destiny. And when I'm being held to a 10-year contract, that gets a little nerve-wracking. But anyhow, eventually you learn to make the best of it. But so going from college and then straight into the military, I mean, we are thrusted into, as 22, 23-year-olds, you were, as an officer, a second lieutenant, it's like right away, lead troops. And, I'm because I'm an officer, I'm in charge of a certain amount of people. And these people are non-commissioned officers and enlisted. And all of them had spent more time in the Army than me, even the youngest privates that'd been through basic training, all the way up to, these 20-year NCOs that I'm supposed to tell what to do and how to do it. And they take orders from me. Well, it's not that simple, so you have to really approach it with the humble attitude. So I had to learn early on, if I'm going to be successful, I've got to listen more than I speak, right?
Yeah.
My commander used to tell me, you have 2 ears and a mouth, use them proportionally. And so I really did that, or tried to do that as much as I could. But then, you get put in these situations where no 22 or 23-year-old really, I think is mature enough to go through, right? And really, it's like, okay, so you go to flight school, and as part of flight school, you're in survival training, SEER school, survive, escape, resist, and evade. And then you go to dunker school, where it's like, putting you in a helicopter fuselage, dumping you underwater, flipping you upside down, and you got to figure out how to get out blindfolded, right? And so these things were the fun part, right? And then it's like you graduate flight school, and then you go to your unit, and that's where you really are tested. And went to Fort Riley, Kansas. And from there, it was a deployment to Iraq, and that was around 2010. And so I did that, and I think that tour was it was not as difficult as I thought it would be. But again, I knew nothing. I didn't know what I was getting myself into. But then, you come back and you go through more training. And I think it was the level of responsibility I had maybe wasn't as much as my tour in Afghanistan, where I, as a commander and responsible for 45 people and, 13 Apache helicopters, it's like, if it can go wrong, it will. And so you ask, like, hey, what part did the military play in all this? And I didn't know it at the time. Like, I was just, woe is me. I'm overseas, my family's back home, and I'm going through some pretty crappy situations. And I remember several times, just wanting to quit. And you've got this band of brothers and sisters that everyone's just behind you, and we all support each other. So it's like the struggle with the military and even coming back home, right? So some people are, they say veterans love war, and I don't think it's that they love war. It's just that bond that you create while you're there. And then when you come back home, you lose that, because you're just thrusted right back into civilian life. And that's where the real battle starts. But my point is all the things that I endured in the Army, the deployments and the unknowns, that gave me a new level of risk, being able, I guess, to take on more risk and not seeing that as something to turn away from. Right.
Yeah. Well, The other thing I think I heard in all that, I get taking risk tolerance, I guess, certainly. But one of the things I heard out of what you said was that, you don't feel adequate, but you jumped in anyway and made it work because you maybe had more talent than you thought you had, or whatever the reason was. But that's an entrepreneurial story too, right? I mean, that's really what's happening with your company. When you start a company, you never feel adequate when you start it, right? And there's always so much to learn, but you're making it work.
Yeah. and talking about the level of the confidence that you gain just from going through those struggles, even though you don't realize it at the time, but it got me to the point to where, okay, well, I've done my 10 years, I can get out, and I'm going to go, work for corporate, and I'm going to do great because I had this military experience. I'm going to be able to run circles around all these other people that maybe don't have that veterans. And that was a very naive mindset for me to have because that wasn't the case. I still had to try really hard. But I was doing well at my company, and I'd received a couple of promotions within 3, short time. But I noticed every time I got promoted and I was making more money that I was still unfulfilled and just I'm banging my head against the wall. Like, what is it? What do I want out of life? And why can't I figure this out? And I was just kind of going through the motions thinking that, all these promotions, more money, now if I get to this level, then I'll be happy. And it was just, what do they call that? Insanity, doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different outcome. Right. And
right.
So, the question that when this idea came up, and am I adequate enough to do this? Do I know what I'm doing? The answer is no. But just as my military career taught me, jump in and you'll figure it out. I've learned how to figure things out, things that I would never thought I could do. You really surprise yourself. And some people would ask, man, you've got this great career and this great salary. Like, why would you be willing to throw that away? Don't you find that risky? And, I said, well, ask yourself this question. Are you doing what you want to do right now for the rest of your life? And if the answer is no, then do something about it, because that's the real risk. If you look back when you're 65 years old, ready to retire, and you're thinking, wow, man, if all these missed opportunities, things I should have done, would have done, it's too late at that point. I mean, so that's my whole thing is, yes, it was a risky move, but it was one that it was scarier staying there than it would be for me to take this leap.
Folks, we're here chatting with Andrew Arbogast. Andrew is the owner and founder of Arbos Cheese Dip. So let's get to the real star here, right? The cheese dip. Let's talk about, you said it was inspiration from your dad's recipe, I guess.
That's right.
Yeah. So let's shout out cheese dip. What makes Arbos Cheese Dip better than anything else anyone can try? Oh man. So,
I lucked into this, it's just like cheese dip is such an easy concept and a lot of people enjoy it. It's one of those, it's so easy. You can just, if you're assigned something, oh, hey, I'll bring chips and dip. Right. And so that in itself, I was fortunate to have that because it's almost a year-round product. Well, so Arbos Cheese Dip, the reason why it is set apart from others is because I basically took that homemade recipe and I scaled it, right? And so some of the store-bought cheese dips you have, the quality is low. I'm not even talking about the shelf stable. The shelf stable, the stuff that's in the chip aisle that it's never refrigerated and has a 30-year shelf life. Like, let's leave that off, but talk about the ones in the refrigerated section, the perishable item. And sometimes it's just cheese. It's just like watered down cheese that you can dip a chip in and it won't break. Maybe in many cases it is like glue and you got to heat it up. And it's such an easy concept where it's like, okay, well, I didn't invent this recipe, but everyone for the last 20 years has told us how good it is. It's got this creamy, spicy, flavorful appearance, and we haven't even tasted it yet. If you just look at it, you can see all the seasonings like shining through, and it's mouthwatering, right? Mm-hmm. And then you dip chip in it, and your chip doesn't break, and then it coats the chip enough still to where it's not like dipping it in water, And this is when it's cold. So that was my thing. In Memphis, I don't know why we eat cheese dip cold. We'll heat it up too, but it's one of those, maybe we're lazy. We just open the fridge, grab it, and dive in. And that's what I wanted to replicate. And that's what my dad's has always been. You can eat it hot or cold. And so when you are eating it, you'll notice like, man, this has got great flavors. And then after you eat it, then it, you'll notice that kick at the end. So it sets itself apart in that way.
So it's beguiling, as it were. It starts out slow, but it's got a kick at the end, huh?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I love it.
And it's not too spicy, so kids can eat it too. So.
Okay. Awesome. So, are there different, do you have different flavors, or talk about the product line?
Sure. So, right now the only available flavor is the original recipe.
Okay.
And that's what's in stores now. Like I said, we're in 2 warehouses, and that's spanning across about 10 states. You'll see Arbos Cheese Dip, and it's, the original, it's yellow. It's a yellow cheese dip.
Okay.
But we are soon releasing a queso blanco, and a spicy version of the original. And so we're looking at sometime mid this year for that to launch as well, because I was told, hey, you're not going to be successful with one SKU. You got to develop more. And so I've been experimenting in the kitchen, and I think we found the right formula. It's just a matter of taking the time to do it correctly and releasing it at the right time.
Gotcha. And you can, folks that are interested in your cheese dip can find it in 700 locations around the Southeast.
Yeah. So
wow.
It's available in 700 stores. Now the store has to order it. It doesn't mean they're automatically going to stock it. And so what I tell people is if they want to try Arbos cheese dip, and you're in Georgia, Alabama, Kentucky, Tennessee, Arkansas, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Indiana, reach out to me or go to arbosdip.com. And you can tell me where you live, and I can say, hey, look, there's a store that's 5 minutes from your location. We're about to have a store locator on the website. So you can do that, and then it'll populate, and it'll say, it is available, or is stocked, or can be stocked. And it's one of those where these stores listen to customers. They don't listen to me. I can call and say, hey, you need to order Arbos cheese dip, but it's the customers going in and more or less demanding it. And then it happens. So.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So I know this is changing. You're adding stores all the time, but give folks a general sense of what stores they can find the cheese dip in now, or the ones that at least know about you and customers can ask.
Sure. So one of the most common ones is a food giant, and they've got about 130 stores all across Tennessee. All of the Piggly Wigglies, the Cash Savers, those are the bigger names. And it's one of those where it's like, if you have an independent store like a Harps or something, and you're not going to Walmart or to Target or to Kroger, your independent stores 9 times out of 10 are the ones that order from this warehouse that I'm in called AWG, Associated Wholesale Grocers. And we're also getting into Cisco and PFG, which is Performance Food Group. Mm-hmm. And the beauty of that is I'm working on a 5-pound bag for food service, right? So if restaurants that are hearing this are interested in carrying Arbos, if you're a customer of Cisco or PFG, we're going to have you covered here in March. That's when we're officially launching. And as part of that too, we're doing what's called C stores, convenience stores. So even if you're a store that's not an AWG, but you want to become a customer of Cisco and you do retail, you can order it through Cisco or PFG, like I said. So we're trying to take care of the masses until we can kind of, maybe get into the Krogers and some of those other bigger names like Publix and hopefully Costco one day. So
there you go. Awesome. Andrew Arbogast, folks, founder, owner, chief cheese dip maker at Arbos Cheese Dip. So what are the long-term plans? Obviously you're going to continue to grow your distribution. You're adding to your product line. I mean, what does the next year or two look like for the company?
So I've got a timeline really that I'm up against. And in order for me to leave my job, I had to, bring on some partners to help fund this, to pay me a salary. So we're working on getting this really up and running to where we're not only profitable, but I'm able to pay myself and take care of them at the 2-year mark from, September 1st, basically, is my starting point. So with that, I have a very aggressive plan to scale. And the way that I've been able to scale this is not because I built my own manufacturing facility. It's because I outsource everything. And that was the key. You have to be willing to let go of doing it all yourself, making it yourself. So once I found a co-packer that could make it for me and he can meet the demand of all these stores, then I go find another one as a backup, or they take care of a different region. So I'm trying to have, several co-packers where one can do a Costco or and a Kroger, and the other one can do Publix and so on. So I'm really looking to get into these major grocery chains, even down to Texas and H-E-B and Wawa's up north, so I've got this big vision of hopefully one day being a household brand, household item,
That's awesome. Great story. So, Andrew, this has been great, and I'm excited for you, and I know our audience is, and would love ways to support you and help you spread the word on what you're doing. Let's get those coordinates out there for those that would like to be in touch, would like to know more. Tell them how they can do that.
Yeah, so I have no problem sharing my information, and the customer dialogue is my favorite part. So you can find me on the website, www.arbosdip.com, ARB as in boy, OS, dip.com. And my email is andrewarbo@arbogastfoods.com, or you can just give me a call at 901-218-7531. I'd love to hear from you, even if you're not a grocery, a business to business customer. If you're an individual that you have a store or restaurant in your town and you'd like to see Arbos there, I love making those connections and would love to hear from y'all.
Terrific. Andrew Arbogast, folks, with Arbos Cheese Dip. Andrew, thank you again for coming on. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for having me, John. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Hey, folks, just a quick reminder. You can find Nashville Business Radio, our show, on all the major podcast apps. Go to Nashville Business, or just search for Nashville Business Radio on your favorite app. You'll find the show. We would love it if you'd subscribe, if you're not already subscribed, and share the show. That's the best way to get the word out. It's not about us or Business RadioX. Frankly, it's about our great guests like Andrew. You've heard his story. Entrepreneurs like Andrew deserve to be found and celebrated, and we want to help them in their journey. So you can help us help them if you'll share the show and pass it along, particularly if you know some cheese dip lovers out there.
That's right.
Yeah. So for my guest, Andrew Arbogast, I'm John Ray. Join us next time here on Nashville Business Radio.